Welcome to the Crimson Engine. My name is Rubidium. Today we are talking about quality and how to achieve, encourage, align with, and bring out excellence in the people around you. How to choose the right people to collaborate with that are on the same page as you, and then inspire them through leadership, through example, to do the very best they can, even better than they thought possible, to make your movie or project or TV show or corporate video so good that it stands out and brings you more opportunities and advances your career. Most people think of leadership as listening to people, being nice, providing a generous paycheck, a good work environment where people feel appreciated, saying thank you. And I want to go on record as saying I have tried these things and they usually don't work. There's a great quote by the Netflix founder where he and the head of HR were walking back from a meeting to their offices, and they went past the Netflix hot tub that Netflix had installed to, make employees happy and get them to work harder. And as they got closer to the 3 or 4 developers, programmers in the hot tub, they realized they were just all talking shit about the company and how terrible the company was. And they kind of broke out laughing because they were like, here are these guys all being paid multiple six figures, $400,000 and $500,000 a year. And in the middle of a Tuesday, they're in a corporate sponsored hot tub event and they're talking about how hard they have it and how terrible it is to work for Netflix. I think the more if you give people more and more and more, it almost makes them want more and more and more. You can never buy your way to someone's approval. You can never buy your way to excellence. You can get really good talent if you pay well, but you can't pay them so well that they want to excel. I want to contrast that with a story of Enzo Ferrari. Ford versus Ferrari is a fantastic book, and it talks a lot about someone who was very prickly by nature, didn't say a lot. When he did, usually criticized people, was very hard to please, paid people nothing, if anything, and by all accounts was not a pleasant person. And yet he consistently attracted the very best talent, and that talent in drivers and engineers and designers, and that talent pushed themselves beyond what they were previously thought they were capable of in the service of his company. How did he do it? He had a organizing principle. He had a why, a very big why, and that was to be the best. He wanted to win, and he put winning at the center of everything that his company did. And that seems obvious, overly obvious. But at the time that he started Ferrari, most car manufacturers were using races just to test their designs. And it was fine if they came in second, third, fourth, fifth. And it was really just almost like an advertising exercise to get people looking at the Fiat or the Bugatti or whatever it was. And Ferrari, once he left Fiat, I think, and created his own cars, he was obsessed with winning. He was winning was anything and everything. And, he won a lot of the early prize money of these races and kept the company going. He didn't like to meet the drivers because in early days of racing, driving was incredibly hazardous and a lot of them were killed. So he didn't want to make friends with his employees lest he have to, mourn them at their funerals. But he, unlike a lot of other manufacturers, he didn't say, okay, well, play it safe, get to the finish line. We're not going to do this race. We're going to do this race. He would turn up at every single race they could. And he said, we will either win or we will crash. We will go as fast as we can. Winning was everything to him. And that attracted other people who had the same philosophy. Even though he didn't treat them that well, didn't pay them that well, if you were like him, if you were cut from the same cloth and winning was your reason for getting up in the morning, you wanted to be the best, you had this fire inside you to be on the podium holding the trophy, Ferrari was the team to drive for. And people fought each other to drive for Ferrari, even though nothing else, there was no other incentive, because that was their organizing principle as well. And they wanted to be part of a team where everyone was doing their best to win, not just to design an engine that was going to go in, 250,000 production cars. He was only interested in winning. And that philosophy carried on now over a century into the brand that, of the prancing horse. So everyone everywhere sees it and knows that mark means excellence, and that mark means a dedication to winning whatever the costs. Now, you can say that that's not healthy, and for the people who died in the races, it certainly wasn't. But you can see how when a leader sets the standard and creates the philosophy, when he brings the why to the project, other people will either get on board or get out of the way and allow other people to take part. Steve Jobs had a lot to say about A players, B players, and C players. He only wanted A players, though it's very difficult in a large organization only to have A players. But he said, as far as possible, hire those people that are dedicated to being the best, because those people want the project to be the best. They want the people around them to be the best so they can be as good as they can be. Once you hire B players, people that are, would love to do well, but aren't interested in sacrificing for it, they don't like being in the A environment because they're constantly being brought out of their comfort zone. So they'll hire C players, people that are just there for the paycheck, people that are not even particularly good at their jobs, because B players feel like A players around C players. And very quickly, if you hire enough B players or let that many into your organization or your project, you fill up with C players, and then you start dragging everyone down. There's another story that was told to me by a friend who runs not a large company, I think maybe a dozen people. And he brought in a business coach, and the guy's like, well, how many of your people are the best at what they do? And my friend said, 80%. He's like, watch what happens. So 8 out of the 10. Watch what happens when you fire the B players and replace them with A players. So that's what my friend did. It was the secretary and somebody else, I don't remember. And he got rid of them, gave them a generous severance package, then increased the salary by 50% and hired the best secretary that they could find. And what happened was, once that reminder that you could do less than the best and get by was out of the organization, was out of the environment, the A players took their standard to the next level. They took their performance to the next level. Once that sort of dead weight was gone, that bottleneck of, excellence, everyone else got a lot better at what they did. I thought it was interesting when Chris Nolan chose to do, or was selected to do, the Batman reboot. The previous Batman Forever or Batman and Robin had been so campy and really meant to sell McDonald's toys, and not many people had stayed away. So when they chose to reboot it and Chris Nolan got the job, he immediately decided to hire Morgan Freeman, Michael Caine, Christian Bale, Gary Oldman. He got Oscar winners or better. He got the best actors he could find, because he knew that if he surrounded himself with people that took their job very, very seriously and he would not be able to phone it in. He would not be able to do anything but something extraordinary. He didn't want to fall into the comic book movie cliche of, everything doing what works or doing the usual tropes. He wanted to do something that was an incredibly well-made, dark, captivating crime film, and the hero just happened to dress up as a bat. I think that's how he pitched it. And so when he got the best actors on board, it set a standard and elevated what would have been a pretty, another comic book movie to the stratosphere, and it went on to perform really, really well, have 2 incredible sequels. So if you want to set a high standard, if you want to be at your best and elevate what you're capable of, surround yourself with people who take their job very seriously and want the best as well, then that's one way to kind of guarantee that you won't fall back into mediocrity. The reason that I personally am so interested in doing a good job, in doing a extraordinary job, is that caring and quality are some of the elements that allow an independent filmmaker to outperform a film that has 100 or 10,000 times your budget. If you're competing with a movie that was made for $200 million and advertised with $150-200 million, that's $500 million almost in expenses, in investment. And you're saying, I'm going to make this movie for $50,000, and I want people to see both of those posters on Amazon or iTunes and pick mine over the other one. I have to have done something extraordinary. I can't just, make your standard independent film. I have to do something that's really well made and has a really incredible premise and is really well acted and has what that big film doesn't, which is daring and passion and something that comes from the heart, something real. So, if you can't work in this field as an independent filmmaker and phone it in, right? Like, you can't. Who are you phoning it in for? You don't have a lot of money to spend. You're not getting paid. It's going to take years of your life. You may as well commit to those few days that you're on set, those few weeks, for them to be, like your Olympics, like something you've been preparing for 4 years. Probably won't prepare for 4 years. You'll probably, develop the script for a year, do pre-production for a year by the time you've raised money and found locations and cast. And then you'll do a year of post-production and publicity afterwards. So it almost is like the Olympics. I want to segue from talking about excellence to talking about unpleasantness and this eternal question of, do you have to be a dick, basically, like Ferrari was, an incredibly prickly, unpleasant person. Do you have to be unpleasant in order to get excellence from those around you? Basically, this kind of skeptical idea that, people only perform at their best once they're like threatened or yelled at or fearful that if they don't, there's going to be ramifications. I personally don't think so, because I don't really act that way around anyone, let alone people that are on my movie. And so I like to think that I am able to produce a good result. And here is what I think the reason that this question comes up. So, Steve Jobs, again, is a great example. People tell that he was like a very loving, patient, kind person, and other people say he was absolutely, impatient. He was a complete dick, exploited people around him, ruled with an iron fist, with fear. In a big organization like Apple, with tens of thousands of people, you're obviously going to have different stories. What I think was going on is that when you're you're trying to change the world, when you're trying to create a multi-trillion-dollar company from nothing, which is what Jobs did, when you're trying to, reinvent humanity's relationship with technology, and everyone else is competing with you. And for most of his career, he was like a very distant second to Microsoft and to many other companies, but he came from behind and overcame all of that. I think he is. You have to stay very focused on the mission, and when you're the best at what you do, you want to work with other people that are the best at what they do. There's two approaches to that. One is, if the person isn't up to the standard that you expect, fire them and find somebody else. Call HR, say, hey, Debbie from accounting was 2 days late with the report. Get her out of here. The second approach, and that's very non-confrontational. That's very easy to do, especially when have power like Steve Jobs. The second approach is to confront that person, saying, this isn't good enough. You can either bring your standard of work up to here, or you can leave. And in a sense, the second approach is more compassionate, because you're actually giving people a chance. But if you were to be very nice about it and say, hey, those reports were 2 days late, maybe let's not do that again. And the person would be like, oh yeah, sorry. But it's unlikely that they would change their behavior. Whereas if you get them into your office, say, this is not good enough, this will not stand, this is a world-class company, you're bringing a substandard level of performance to it, bring up your game or you're out of here. That's very confrontational. That makes some people upset. That's where there are a lot of stories of him being a dick in meetings, in advertising agencies, people telling people it's not fast enough, et cetera, et cetera. I think it takes a lot of time to talk people through all the ways they need to change to get to know that person. It's much easier to light a fire under someone by being rude, abrasive, and confrontational. I think that's where a lot of bosses are unpleasant in that way. The counterpoint to that is there are a lot of people on set in the film industry that are frustrated and take it out on other people, especially their subordinates, because the subordinate has no appeal. On one of my sets, actually, we were using the cinematographer's car. An actress needed the keys to go and get something from it, and he sort of chewed her out. He yelled at her, and I was like, "What are you doing? You're just frustrated and tired and angry, and you're going to use the actress. It's nothing to do with you. You're not even supposed to be talking to her as your kind of emotional punching bag." There is a lot of bad behavior on sets, and it's usually by those B and those C players who are experiencing frustration and need to output it onto someone else, which is deeply unfair. And I think if you tolerate that sort of toxic behavior, it does tend to spread. There's a famous Hong Kong filmmaker called Tsui Hark, and he is apparently was very brutal with the people that he worked with, and then they were brutal with the people that they worked with, and so it created a really hostile work environment. He did go on to produce some amazing films like the Once Upon a Time in China series. So it's difficult without knowing the whole situation whether or not that behavior was justified. I think everyone knows when they see someone talking down to someone else and purposely trying to demean them emotionally, that everyone can tell the difference between giving that person blunt feedback and trying to make that person feel small because they feel small. I tell my kids that you will never feel better making someone else feel worse. And I think that's true. But you can, and I think people that want to do their job well, want honest feedback. They don't want you to sugarcoat it. They don't want to just be fired because something went wrong. They'll never know what went wrong. If you are good at your job, if you do care about what you do, the days fly by. There's never enough time. 12 hours can pass like that because you are so engaged in what you were doing. You were so in the details and like assessing all these different factors and making these decisions. Whereas when you're just sitting around waiting for watching the clock, being like, God, I hope we're over soon. 12 hours can feel like an eternity. So I think people that don't aim for the best, that don't try and improve, that don't try and dedicate themselves to excellence, essentially pay their own price because they're not integrated in that way with their work. And so they're always going to be outside it, waiting for things to happen, looking in and criticizing. I thought I had the other day, which I think as on reflection has really has some weight to it, is that our life is only as good as our thoughts about it. So you can always look for the problem in things and say, oh, this is not good enough. This is not good enough. I wish we had more money. I wish we had more time. I wish the actors were better. I wish that we had better equipment. You can always be in that mindset of not enough, or you can always be in the mindset of, what a privilege this is to be able to do this as my career. What a privilege this is to be able to work with people that I admire on material that I think is going to make a difference, on a show that's going to be great. And as soon as you walk on set, as soon as you meet people, you can instantly tell who's coming to the work with a positive mind frame and who's coming to it with a negative mind frame. It would drive me crazy when I would hire people on film sets. It was usually like not the DP, but the gaffer, and a lot of the time the sound guy, and then sometimes like the art person. They were the 3 or 4 positions that always seemed to be there just for the check, or always seemed to have the feeling that like this show was beneath them. And so they had this energy of it's not good enough. I really think that optimism, that dedication to doing your best with whatever you have, even if it's like a light bulb and 2 sticks, that is one of the most effective forms of excellence. Like you're there dedicated to getting the most from what you have, and you can always stretch it further. You can always think of a way to solve the problem with the elements at hand. That for me is, I would rather take an optimistic amateur over a cynical professional, because that same skepticism and that same negativity tends to, just like the demanding excellence, tends to spread through the crew over time. And the longer you shoot with someone like that, the more that kind of cancer eats away at the way everyone else does their jobs. But it all focuses back on you, the director or producer, whatever role you're playing. If you're the one who brought the project together, if you're the leader, then the way to lead is by example. It is to bring your A game every day. It is to lift up the people that you're working with rather than pull them down. It is to ask from them that they do the best by doing your best. And it is to be as positive as you can, even when everything is going wrong, and to, be the beacon of light for the film unit, for the whole project. Even this is true in pre-production or post-production as well. You never give up hope that even when there is no reason that this film should turn out to be an amazing project, you believe against all odds that it will, and time again, it will come through, because every project goes through that stage of all hope is lost. Every project has been so down that there's no one can see a way out. If the director doesn't give up hope, if the director is determined to work through it, she'll bring everyone else along on that journey. So for me, that is what leadership is about. It is not looking to other people for the inspiration, for the motivation. It is bringing enough for everyone and staying calm, staying composed, and going outside your comfort zone to do something extraordinary, because that is really the only way that you're going to make your mark on this industry and the world. Thank you very much for listening. My name's Rubidium. Don't let your stories die inside you. Find a way to bring them out into the world. See you next time.